This is your Thursday Daily Delivery. I am Michael Rand. We got a lot of good stuff to get to today. Patrick Reusse and Chip Scoggins will join me for a little bit of a bonus interview later on in the show. I caught up with them out at the State Fair last week to talk about the new book they just collaborated on. Chip writing it, Patrick being the subject of it. Name of that book being, of course, Tales from the Minnesota Sports Beat, a lifetime on Deadline. Buy that wherever you can find your favorite books. But just some fun talk about the book, about that process, and of course, once you get Reusse going on some stories, you don't want to shut off the record button. So we'll get to that here in a little bit, just a little bit of amusement before we get too deep into the football season, before we get too deep into a time when we might not have an opportunity to get to that. So we're going to run that back today. We're also going to talk about start of the NFL season, which is today. Some interesting stuff I read the other day on Russell Wilson. I've got an interesting Kirk Cousins stat I want to share with you as well towards the end of the show. But first, what did I miss? I hope you missed it. I hope you didn't watch the Twins versus Yankees doubleheader. Twins losing game one in nightmare fashion, 5-4 in 12 innings. I don't think you could have scripted a worse way to lose when you've got a bunch of important games coming up, to have to burn through some of your best pitchers and still lose that game. And then the nightcap, predictably, they lose 7-1. Get a little bit of a break on the whole day when the Royals rally to beat the Guardians 2-1. They got 2 runs in the bottom of the ninth to win that game. So the Twins 2 back of Cleveland. Chicago White Sox also 2 back of Cleveland, pulling even with the Twins, although the White Sox have 1 more win and 1 more loss. So technically the Twins a percentage point or 2 ahead of them, but not looking great. They're still in the mix, but the larger point I want to make right now is I think I've identified, and we've probably talked about this over the course of the year on this show, but I think I've identified what the problem is here, why there's this disconnect between a team that has, by and large been in contention all year, but just hasn't really captured the imagination of folks. And, it's not overly complicated, but I felt like Wednesday's doubleheader really underscored the problem, and that is, with this team, what's coming, and it's not fun. And I mean that in a couple different ways. One is kind of it's kind of a joyless brand of baseball, and it was exemplified in Game 1. Louis Varland making his Major League debut for the Twins. North St. Paul native, been a great story, rising through the minor league system, minor league pitcher of the year last year, great for Double-A Wichita early this year, great for the Saints, gets his debut in Yankee Stadium and pitches a great game. He gets through 5 innings with 1 run allowed. They let him come out for the 6th, which, again, I was surprised, right? We've got a team here where you are surprised when a pitcher who is pitching well is allowed to start a 6th inning. And I know, this isn't just the Twins. This is the way that baseball goes by and large these days, right? Pitchers are limited a lot more. 6 innings is the new 7 innings. 7 innings is the new 8 innings. Nobody goes deep in games anymore, really, unless you are, an ace of a staff, unless you have this reputation. 5 innings is the new 6. However you want to say it, it keeps getting, pushed down, and then more reliance on the bullpen. But Varland is cruising along, gives up a hit in the 6th, then gets an out, and then Aaron Judge back at the plate. He'd homered off of Varland early in the game. Varland sitting at 80 pitches, and exactly what is coming. He is going to come out of the game, Twins winning or up 3-1 at that point. And even when the move is defensible, even when you can look at it intellectually and say, okay, he's at 80 pitches, he's in his major league debut, he's probably pumped through a ton of adrenaline already. The guy coming up right now is on pace to set an American League record for home runs. He's having an amazing season. He's already homered off of him. Even when intellectually a move makes sense, that what's coming is this guy's coming out of the game after 5 1/3 innings. It's the same thing that happens time and time again this year. And even when the move works out, and I bet that even we would look at it and say, on balance, it probably works out a little bit more than it doesn't. Even when it works out, it's not fun. It's not a fun way to watch a game when you know somebody who is doing well is not going to be able to continue in the game. And in this case, he comes out, Griffin Jacks almost immediately gives up a game-tying 2-run home run. And they go to extra innings after a bunch of scoreless innings. Yankees pull it out in the bottom of the 12th after the Twins had taken a 4-3 lead. And that's another thing. You kind of knew at that point, after Carlos Correa failed to extend the lead in the top of the 12th, you knew that the Yankees were going to rally and beat the Twins, which is exactly what happened in this game. So you know it's coming, and it's not fun in a couple different senses. Like I said, one, it's this kind of joyless brand of baseball that's, again, it's smart to a degree, but also overthinks the game sometimes, doesn't leave enough room for the feel, the context, whatever you want to say about the game. And even when the move makes sense intellectually, it's not fun. And I think people have a problem with that. And it certainly is not fun to always lose to the Yankees, to always lose to these best teams. Megan Ryan had a stat in her game story. Twins something like, it's just ridiculous. Against the Yankees now since 2002, the Twins have just gotten absolutely clobbered. I think that what's the final? What's 98-37 the Yankees are against the Twins. So Twins 37-98 against the Yankees since 2002. That's just absurd. That is a obviously terrible record over 135 games. That is amazingly bad in that span. The Yankees are 53-13 against the Twins in New York during that span. So you know that when they go against these good teams, when they go against the Yankees in particular, they are going to struggle. The record against other division leaders this year, not Cleveland, but talking about the three of the best teams in baseball this year, the Astros, Dodgers, and Yankees, they are 1-15 against those teams now. 1-15. The one win is against the Yankees. They're 1-5 against the Yankees, 0-6 against the Astros, 0-4 against the Dodgers. And still, they are still in this race. They're being propped up by an awful American League Central. Any other division, they would be trailing by double digits. And, they're going to be in it to the end. Rocco Baldelli talked post-game about how he doesn't want to hear about, good efforts against these good teams. He doesn't want to hear about anything else. They're just trying to win games. So let's play the Rocco quote before I finish with a couple other thoughts.
The division itself is just up for grabs. And we may not know who wins our division until the very end of the year. And even that, I don't even worry about that in any way, shape, or form. I worry about today's game, and nothing else matters. If you win your ball game on that given day, really nothing else matters. You've taken care of business, and you have done everything that you can do. If we're not winning, then I look up and spend my time trying to figure out how we can win a ball game. But we're going to worry about tomorrow, and then we're going to worry about Cleveland after that. Teams that are at the top of their division, teams that go on long runs and do good things, they're difficult teams to beat. They're more difficult than your average team that you're going to run into on your schedule. And they win most of their games. That's I think something that we've seen from the Yankees and the Astros and the Dodgers and those teams that have been kind of in those spots. But they're good teams to go up against, and they're good teams to kind of learn a little about yourself when you play them. And I want to beat those teams. I don't want to be sitting here talking about how good the Yankees are anymore, or the Astros, or the Dodgers, or any of those teams. I want to talk about our guys and how we find ways to win ball games. Any which way is fine with me, but that's what I'd like to do.
Well, that's all well and good, but then go beat these teams. They only have one more chance, probably mercifully for them, Thursday. Then the schedule gets a little bit easier in terms of not having to face these the best of the best. They've got Cleveland in a huge series starting Friday. We'll have Megan Ryan on Friday's Daily Delivery, by the way, to talk about that. But if you want to do it, then do it. Go win these games. I know you're decimated by injuries. I know everything is piling up on you, but go give fans a reason to get behind this team again. It feels like that winning streak they put together just a couple weeks ago. That feels like a couple months ago now. Everything, it's just this up and down, and this kind of joyless way of going about this is killing any momentum they have and in making fans extra cynical this season. So sports should be fun, and these Twins are not fun.
MGM Wine and Spirits is the choice for savings, service, and a great selection of spirits, premixed cocktails, wines, and of course, ice-cold beers and hard seltzers. With over 30 locations throughout the Twin Cities and beyond, there's an MGM near you. Head to MGMWineandSpirits.com to find a convenient location in your area. Get social. Follow MGM on Facebook and Instagram for all the latest news and trends. Make great moments with MGM Wine and Spirits, your locally owned and operated choice for over 50 years. Save time, save money. Shop MGM.
Chip Scoggins and Patrick Reusse from the Star Tribune. I don't know if you guys know this. Both these guys are columnists at the Star Tribune, and Patrick Reusse with Chip has a new book, Tales from the Minnesota Sports Beat, a lifetime on deadline. So, you guys, how long did this take to kind of come together, this book, and what was the genesis of the idea for a book with you, Patrick?
I had to twist his arm. I've been wanting to write a book for a couple years. And I wanted to write this book about Pat's life. I've been Pat's colleague for almost 23 years now, and I've heard a lot of his stories and know some of his background about his dad, Richard, and growing up in Fulda. But so I approached Pat, and I knew I had to do it in a certain way because for those that don't know Pat, he has the smallest ego of anybody you'll ever meet. He did not want... Oh, he's a legend. He didn't want the Sid statue and all that. That makes him squeamish. So I pitched it to Pat, and Pat said, let's go to the Gopher Bar in St. Paul and have some Coney dogs, and we'll talk about it. So we hashed it out there, and Pat, his one, I guess, demand is that it was about his life through his stories, right? Him telling stories, all his growing up in the business, covering the different teams here, and so he wanted to be a collection of his stories, and I think we did that. And so we started last winter. I can't even remember how long it was, but it took several months just because of work schedule and vacation and life, but we would meet every Sunday at the Star Tribune early in the morning, and we would I'd interview Pat for 5 or 6 hours and then go back, and that would basically be a chapter. We had broken it up into chapters that different areas of his life that we wanted to get to, and I think all told, between that and getting back together during the editing process, probably, I want to say 50 hours?
I don't know how long it took you to 50 hours between you together.
Me and him together, a lot more than 50 put together, but 50 hours with me and Pat together.
50 hours to write a book would be great. You could just do one in a work week.
Yeah, that's right. But, to get to listen to Pat tell stories for 50 hours was a career highlight for me.
Well, I mean, go ahead, Pat.
And it was the idea. This is not a biography, but it's just a collection of stories, and then I kind of wrote a precede and a finish, and Chip was responsible. When I wrote the Sid biography in '97, I used to always make fun of Sid being the only sports writer who had to have somebody else write his book, and now
look at you now.
That happened to me too. So that's it's my wife read it. I was waiting for her. And she gave it about a 3.5 on a scale of 5, so that wasn't too bad. So that's better than she gives me on life. So that was okay. So
a book with your stories could be 1,000 or 2,000 pages.
Yes.
How did you narrow that down?
What we did is what I remembered. And I'm sure there's a few that quite a number that. Gee, I wish I'd remembered that one, but it's it was fun in the end, and I think that most of the reviews I've gotten from people, I guess they're being nice, but they've enjoyed it. So
that's
it
good.
Doesn't, as I said, it's the price is right because it's not a hardcover. So
that's right.
It's
we had to throw a few stories out.
Yeah, what were some of your favorite stories from the book? or that didn't make it, or that you can tell.
My favorite story, and I won't give away the secret, but everybody loves Pat's voice, and that's like the biggest. That's one of the number one questions I get asked. Is there going to be an audiobook for this? It's not in the works, but if we could get Pat to read the book, you'd have to pay him a lot of money probably to do that. That wasn't in the contract. But when Pat was a young boy, his mom sent him to a certain place to work on his voice because he had bad phlegm or whatever. And I won't say where she sent him.
I was having great. I'd lose my voice in the spring and the fall.
Okay.
They were going to teach me how to talk from my diaphragm rather than straight out of my throat. That was the deal. So
I won't say where his mom sent him, but young Patrick got an education.
Yes.
I'll leave it at that.
Okay.
You'll have to buy the book and see where she sent.
Her name was Stella Lenchi, was the voice coach, and she lived in a big house somewhere, I think near Lake Harriet, and she was not the only woman there, let's put it that way.
I think I know what you're saying.
For a 10-year-old kid, it was... What
Got a lot more than voice
there
lessons.
There might have been another business going on.
A lot more than voice lessons. Okay, let's see.
But the one thing that I think, for me, and I'm 50 and I've been in the business, for almost 30 years, but Pat was of the generation where they had different access.
Yes.
I mean, he tells a story of, hey, I'm going to call up Bear Bryant. And he calls up Bear Bryant, and I want to see if I can come down and do a column. It's like, can you imagine that today? Or flying on the plane and tapping Bud Grant on the shoulder, and him and Bud Grant having a conversation on the team plane going out to, I mean, like to have that type of access that Pat had to particularly baseball lent itself to just some fabulous storytelling and stories.
Yeah, there's no ESPN to compete with them coming in with the cameras and all that.
Right.
If you came down a day early, you could just go talk to Barry Switzer for an hour before the game. Now, all his time would be taken by ABC or whoever it is, right? So that's that is the greatest change, and of course the internet has changed that a lot too. But that's in our business, access is. I mean, with baseball, you could wander out to the ballpark at 1:30 in the afternoon if you had nothing to do for a 7 o'clock game and go in the clubhouse and see who was hanging around. Usually they were laying on the couch watching Happy Gilmore or something for the 130th time. But,
Right.
You go and Gardy make out his lineup and might ask one coach for a little advice. You didn't have an hour and a half meeting to decide whether you're going to take out Dylan Bundy in the fourth inning or not.
They could probably stop having those meetings because they always take him out in the fourth.
Yeah, right, they could. But anyway, access has been the greatest change. Does
that bother you, just in terms of how hard it is to kind of tell those stories now?
It makes me. It makes me. I think. Well, one thing is, I'm a alleged part-timer now. Yeah. And don't travel hardly at all. And I think it's a good time for that because I can go find a piece in Dundas or someplace and not worry about it because we have 3 other columnists chipping, covering the bigger stuff. So I've having done most of that stuff for the big stuff for a lot of years, I kind of enjoy the little stuff now. So that's. As long as I can come up with an idea, I don't care what it is. And the other thing is that we're very hits oriented for the internet.
Yes.
StarTribune.com, but they pretty much let me get away with murder, even though knowing that it may only get 8. They might get 58 people to read it, but they let me write it anyway. So
Patrick, I have access to all the numbers, and your stuff is generally pretty well read no matter what. So know that even if you're not going for the clicks are coming to you.
Well, that's good to know, I guess. But it's. I have, however, said one of the toughest things is it takes me longer to write a column than it ever did now. A, because I'm old, but B, you got to check everything.
Right.
You know, you got to go to the internet. As Sid said, there's a lot of stuff on that internet.
Yes.
And, you know, you can't just throw something out there in generalities because somebody can look it up and find out if you're wrong or not. So it takes extra information takes longer to write than.
Well, then you got to call in all your changes too.
Yes, I do that. I still have not figured out the whatever the hell we're using now,
Chorus
or whatever it is. I'm the last of the emailers, and they let me get away with it. And they do always wait for me to send in the second version. So.
Third version sometimes.
Well, yeah. Sometimes I found one last night at 11 p.m. and sent it in, and that was actually after deadline. But I think they got it, so that's good.
That's the other thing. He has the greatest memory
Yes.
of any person I've ever met. I mean, I had to look up everything Pat said, but he would, you know, we would start like baseball. We're going to do baseball. 1976, Rodney, you know, Twins are in Kansas City in late August, and Rodney goes 4 for 5, and his average gets up to 408. So I'd go back that week and look up everything. It was verbatim. I mean, It was spot on. In those 50 hours and all the stories, there was only one thing I could not verify. And I don't know if it wasn't written about or you couldn't find it, but and it would be spot on. So I can't remember last week. But
Sure.
Patrick has this amazing ability to recall games and like verbatim and identical to how it happened. So, but you know, some of my favorite chapters were his start with the radio TV in his career with Such and how they started, you know, sports talk, Monday Sports Talk, and talk radio and sports talk radio. I didn't know all the details on that, but it sounds like some of the best times of his life, just the characters that they had calling in and how popular that duo with him and Suchere became.
Yeah, it was we always take credit for starting sports talk radio in America because we went on at 81 and Sunday nights on KSTP, and we got fired in the spring of 82.
Okay.
And then Scott Meyer brought us back for Monday night sports talk in the fall of 80, the week after Labor Day in 83. And then Scott Meyer's next job was starting WFAN in New York City, which was the first nation's first all-day sports talk show. And we always say he was inspired by the success of Monday Night Sports Talk that he did it. But yeah, he brought us back, and then of course that show, if you were around then, was hijacked by impersonators.
Yes.
And I think my favorite group that called us back then was Toads, which was a group of high school kids from White Bear Lake High School. Terrorists organized against disgusting sports.
Okay.
And they'd call up and have skits, and you know.
You just let it go? You just let it go.
Yeah, they didn't let them go. We didn't care. One night they kidnapped. They didn't like Bob Bruce, right?
Okay.
They thought he was not good. One night they were kidnapping Bob Bruce to take him off the air, and they were gunfire in the back, and they did like this whole 5-minute thing. I don't know, somewhere that stuff, somebody's got all that stuff someplace, but that was pretty funny.
And then the TV show with the
sports
Dark Star.
The sports show.
Oh,
I mean,
my
that's
goodness.
Yeah, Dark was one of easily one of the most interesting characters I ever met. We created him, you know. He called in to tell us Bud Grant was quitting again. And no, who is this? Dark Star, he said. Okay, yeah. And then in the spirit of the show, we went with it. Well, there it is. You got it officially. Dark Star has told us Bud Grant's quitting for the second time in 85. Well, as it turned out, he got it from Mike Lynn's brother drinking at the Lafayette Club together. Robert. He and Robert were drinking together. And denied by everybody, Sid and everybody, and then 2 weeks later, Bud quit again.
Wow.
At the end of the season, and so Such ended up writing a column for the St. Paul paper about how there's a new scoop master in town to agitate Sid. Sid's gone. Dark Star has replaced him, and Dark took that and ran with it. And my wife has some friends in the media business, and the women there were not big fans of Dark, and they'd always say to her, "How does he know if he's telling the truth or not?" And I'd always say, "Who cares? They're great stories." Who cares? They're entertaining.
The entertainment.
So, yeah, that's true. So yeah, I miss him a lot. There's that void in my life to if we're watching one of the local teams, play like idiots.
Yeah.
You got to have that person to call up to exchange insults with.
Right.
And Dark was always that guy, who you could call up and make fun of the home team. But I guess the story that is the favorite with him, I don't know, I guess we want to say.
Well, you might want to leave out the.
Yeah.
You can tell. Who cares?
When Norm Green was having his playoff run in '91,
Yeah.
he built himself a Nero-like balcony up in the one far end. He just temporary thing, took up some seats, and during that playoff run, Norm would wave to the crowd, and they'd cry, "Norm!" We loved Norm then, and Dark decided that what he wanted more in life than anything was to be sitting next to Norm in that balcony one day, in that booth or whatever it was, and take one of his age-inappropriate girlfriends up there with him and wave. So
You wrote the column that.
I wrote when they came home from Pittsburgh, tied 1-1 in the Stanley Cup Finals. We found out that Norm was putting the Stanley Cup Finals on pay-per-view.
Oh, yeah, that's
in
right.
the Twin Cities.
That's right.
And only 35% of the Twin Cities could even buy it.
Oh, my gosh.
So, and I'd gotten along with him.
Imagine that now.
I'd gotten along with him well, and he called me when things were going bad. But I wrote this column. It was the first reference to Norm Greed, and I basically hammered the hell out of him in the afternoon paper, the Dispatch. And then they won that night to take a 2-1 lead in the Stanley Cup Finals. And I'm driving home, and Dark's doing the midnight to 3 show. And the theme for the night is, does the Twin Cities really need a negative sports columnist like Patrick Reusse? And everybody's calling in, get that fat guy, we hate him. And they all hated him. They all were just ripped. So I got home at 1 in the morning. I called Dark on the in-studio line during the break, which I did often. Said, "That's really a good show you got there going tonight, Dark." He says, "Ain't it great? They hate you." "I might do it again tomorrow night," he said.
With an expletive in
there.
there.
That's the kind of relationship Dark and I had. A lot of needling. And
Oh, that's amazing.
So, yeah, it was, when he's missed, you haven't lived until you watched Highlight in Tijuana with 20 other people in Dark, playing the most fixed sport in the world, Highlight. And he thought the little taquitos in the Highlight bar in Tijuana were the finest food substance in the world. They were like little bricks,
Chip and Patrick, enjoying this conversation. Let's finish up here because I know we got a lot of other appearances for you guys today. Chip, I imagine when you write a book like this, there's things you know, there's things you don't know. Was there one thing that stood out as a surprise or something that you were just like, I didn't really know that, and I'm really glad I do now?
I think it's the first chapter. I did not know Patrick was adopted, that he was an orphan. He grew up his first 10 months in an orphanage. I didn't know that story.
It took 10 months, too, because I was a tub. Then I was only 170 when I got to high school. Then I discovered beer. But yeah, there's some pictures of me as a little kid when they first got me, and I can see why Mom said, "Yeah, let's try for another one here. I don't want to carry that load around." So it took a while to get adopted. Yes, it did. But I'm glad I ended up where I did. So
Absolutely.
Full Minnesota. So.
Well, we're all glad you did, Patrick. Go check out the book, Tales from the Minnesota Sports Beat, A Lifetime on Deadline. Patrick Reusse, Chip Scoggins, forward by Dan Barrero, your old colleague as well.
The forward's the best part of the book. It's outstanding.
It's really good.
Sorry, Chip.
Yeah, that's right. It's really good.
I wouldn't say. What I'm saying is it's really good.
Yeah.
He gave me a big effort. Such is complaining that I didn't use him, and I said, because I know you'll give me 10 minutes. You're always in a hurry. You're an impatient man. I said,
Well,
I need somebody with some pride.
Well, now I got to go read the book, too. You guys should as well. Patrick Reusse, Chip Scoggins, I'm Michael Rand. Thanks for joining us here today.
Like I said at the beginning of the show, always great when Reusse gets going with the stories. Hope you guys enjoyed that. And go pick up the book. It's a quick, easy, breezy read, a lot of fun. Tales from the Minnesota Sports Beat, A Lifetime on Deadline. Congrats to Chip and Patrick on that collaboration. Let us finish with the cooler. Something interesting from ESPN's big piece on Russell Wilson and the breakup with the Seahawks that led to the off-season trade going to the Denver Broncos, and those teams will face each other on Monday Night Football in just a few days. The season opener, by the way, is tonight. Bills versus Rams. That should be a ton of fun. Of course, Vikings, Packers on Sunday. Sounds like one thing that was interesting to me is how obsessed it sounds like Russell Wilson became with winning the MVP award. 2019, sounds like Seattle was up 24-0 in a game. He was an early season contender for MVP, and he was upset because after taking a big halftime lead, the Seahawks ran the ball a lot in the second half, costing him a chance to become a front runner, not letting him pad his stats. And that kind of sat weird with me. Maybe we just don't realize how much these individual awards sometimes mean to these players, and especially Wilson, who has never gotten even an MVP vote. Maybe it's just kind of the sign of disrespect. Maybe you can have aspirations of winning an award and still have aspirations of winning, and by all accounts he was a team player, but that sat weird with me, that he was so obsessed with this that even in the context of a season where you're winning a game, why would that matter to you? Why do you care so much about trying to pad your stats? So it made me think about him a little bit differently, and I'll be watching that as the year goes on. And speaking of Russell Wilson, interesting, Kirk Cousins, Vikings quarterback, you might have heard of him, ahead of Russell Wilson, Lamar Jackson, and some other pretty good quarterbacks in 538's early season ELO rankings. Number 9 among NFL quarterbacks in the ELO rating so far this year, at the beginning of this year. So watch for that. 538's got some pretty good statistical models. They got some, some flaws in there too, some outliers, but like I wrote about on Wednesday, when we think about Kirk Cousins, it always feels like even the people who like him will say, well, he's not a top-tier quarterback, and the people who don't like him will say, well, he's not one of the worst. It's kind of like trying to define where he fits into this kind of middle ground, and here's one example of a statistical model saying he fits in kind of more on the upper end of that, and we'll see if he can play like that. If he plays like the number 9 quarterback in the NFL right now this season, I think the Vikings will be in decent shape this year. If he doesn't, if he's more like 16 to 20, they are going to struggle mightily. So that is one thing to be watching for this season. How much of a jump can he take? Will he take? And is he really worthy of being thought of as a top 10 quarterback? That will do it for today. Like I said, Megan Ryan coming up on tomorrow's show to talk about the Twins. Plenty of good stuff coming up next week. Vikings, Packers, starting up kind of some of our more formatted football programming. We'll have Andrew Kramer on Tuesday next week for a film review. Plenty of other good stuff coming up. Hope you enjoyed today's show. We'll be back at it again on Friday.